Greetings, Legionnaires, and welcome. Today I'll be reviewing Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. As with all my reviews, I'll be going over a brief spoiler-free plot synopsis, the highlights, and the shortcomings. You play as Jedi Padawan Cal Kestis, one of the few that actually avoided Order 66 in the following Jedi Purge. Years later, you find out that Cal has actually been just hanging out on this kind of scrap mining planet, and eventually gets outed when some Inquisitors show up looking for other Jedi because the Force was used at one point, while Cal was trying to save one of his friends. As Cal tries to escape this world, he figures out that the Inquisitors will be after him forever, so he needs a crew that he can depend on. His goal now is to rebuild the Jedi Order, whilst avoiding the Inquisition with his new friends. Let's start as we always do with the highlights of the title. Jedi Fallen Order actually feels kind of like a harken back to a little bit of the older Jedi games from the past, but more of an emphasis on very, very strict lightsaber combat. I played on Jedi Master difficulty, which was like right above hard, and it was pretty punishing, and for some odd reason, I stayed at that throughout the whole thing. I don't know why. Maybe I'm a masochist. But anyway, I found it to be both really aggravating and also really rewarding when I would actually defeat my opponents. I did find it strange, however, that it seemed like every planet I'd show up at, the scout troopers had those little electro batons, which were a perfect counter for my lightsaber. But I digress, whatever, video games, you know. But the lightsaber feels wonderful. I do kind of wish that you could dismember some of the more humanoid enemies, but I understand that that's not the case. And I find the human enemies to be much more interesting and compelling to fight than the beasts and the droids that you also encounter. But still, it feels really gratifying to beat up all of these guys and kind of progress through the world, especially once you require more of your actual Force powers. That is a lot of fun, and you start to feel more and more like a true Jedi later on. The actual worlds themselves look beautiful, and the level design is crazy intricate and full of all these pathways and things that gets a little convoluted sometimes. We'll get to that later. But I thought it was really pretty well done for the most part, and you really get to have that sense of almost the Titanfall pilot running as you kind of wall jump from thing to thing and move throughout an area, and there's definitely a certain momentum going forward onto each of these planets, which are actually not necessarily in a linear order, which I thought was an interesting choice as well. So you can kind of go to different planets depending on the story where you're at, but sometimes they kind of hold you off depending on your Force powers. So for some reason you can't get somewhere right away, maybe just wait a little bit, come back to that planet. That's totally fine. I also like the characters. Cal is fine. I think he's more of just kind of an avatar for you to become that person. There isn't a ton of personality with him, and that's not supposed to be a dig at him. I think he plays the part of it just fine, but he kind of falls flat compared to your other companions in Seer and Grease. Seer kind of being this former Jedi with a dark past, and Grease being this really fun pilot, alien, just really fascinating to watch, and the lip sync on all of this stuff also looks really good, and I mention that because Grease especially has this kind of big, crazy alien lips, and there's kind of like a slit in the middle, and it's all this stuff. It looks really nice. And there's definitely that kind of Rogue One original trilogy aesthetic throughout most of the Imperial stuff that you do see, which I also am a really big fan of, and I love seeing that. And the last thing I do really need to mention here is that the Stormtrooper banter is just so fantastic. It is so kind of pure Star Wars, and I really appreciate it. So if you're going to kind of sneak up on some Stormtroopers, just maybe wait a couple of seconds. Just listen to what they have to say, because usually it's pretty darn good.
What should we do about Craves?
Calm down, rookie. Just point your blaster at them and shoot.
Oh, right. Got it. Point and shoot. Keeping count of traitors whom I've eliminated.
I tried to, but I lost count.
Maybe we'll both get recognized for our devotion to the Empire.
Unfortunately, Jedi Fallen Order, it does have some faults in it. One of the biggest things that I kept coming across is a lot of texture pop-in. I was playing on Xbox One, not the One X, so maybe that was part of the problem, but more often than not, when I would show up at a place, it would take a few pretty long seconds, as it were, wink wink, to actually, finally load in and everything. So yeah, I was kind of ripped out of the immersion from that a lot. Another thing, and maybe that's more of a gameplay perspective, but you kind of meditate and you have the skill tree, which is pretty, standard, straightforward. You don't really get to specialize them in any way, because by the time you're done with the game, for the most part, you're going to be able to collect all that you need to pretty much advance almost everything there. But when you meditate, you actually respawn all of the enemies, which is a very, very Dark Souls-y thing to do. And kind of weird in a game that's trying to focus on their story to kind of bring back all the things you killed. I thought it was kind of strange but maybe that's just me. I still just I wasn't a fan of it, because it felt like I didn't want to rest all the time and meditate, which is kind of almost anti-Jedi in some respects, you know, because it refills not only your health, but also your health packs, which do take a second to use, which can be frustrating in the heat of battle when you're trying to get little BD1, who, by the way, I should say, is the greatest highlight of this game. BD1, I love you so much. When he's a little droid, he throws you something, he's a little stim, and you try to heal yourself. Sometimes that half second is your death, and it's very frustrating. But yeah. Also, some of the levels don't feel very Star Wars-y. This might sound a little strange, but a lot of this game feels like one part Dark Souls, one part Tomb Raider. And it feels kind of like Avatar sometimes. It kind of loses a little bit of that kind of pure Star Wars aesthetic occasionally. I know that might sound strange, but there's something about it that some of the worlds they took a lot of liberties with, and kind of got a little too far away, I think, from what's so enjoyable about this whole, you know, time period, is that there are so many Imperial installations, and yeah, just doing that the whole time will get pretty boring, but some of the best parts of this game are going through Imperial installations and in flashbacks to when you were a young Padawan. I kind of want more of that. I want more story-driven levels, as opposed to just kind of like, oh, you gotta get to the tomb, you gotta get into this tomb, and you gotta fight your way into there and just kill everything on the way, and that's the story. The story's gonna be there once you get to the tomb. I kind of want more than that. And there are a few other side characters that do pop up here and there. Some kind of okay, some kind of really boring and basic, and especially one villain, I was like, who's this guy? Like, get him out of here. But yeah, there's a few even moments where it feels very much like God of War, where they're trying to kind of go way big and way over the top. And for a game where your combat is pretty kind of intimate and a little more personal, those moments feel a little out of place to be doing something so over the top and bombastic. That's just kind of that's maybe more of a personal feeling though, but it's something I wanted to bring up.
Good thing they have you.
You mean that, or are you just giving me a hard time?
I think it's kind of nice. You're important, and not just to those plants. You've helped keep us alive.
Oh, you're not so bad yourself. Hey, just for that, I'm gonna name a plant after you. I'm gonna call this one Kid.
What an honor.
Overall, Jedi Fallen Order is a solid game. It feels really good. The lightsaber combat, even though I wish you could cut through more things, feels excellent, and you can definitely tell they put a lot of time into making sure you feel like a Jedi, especially at the end of the game when you get all of your Force powers. Cal Kestis is pretty good. I like Seer and Grease a little bit better. Some of the other villains can be nice, some of them not so great as far as like compelling individuals. But it kind of makes me just want to see where they're going to go next, because there's this nice fun crew here that I think has the potential to kind of divulge and go off into other things. Or, you know, kind of have Respawn make a true Darth Vader video game. Come on, you guys, you can do it! I would adore that so much. Oh my gosh. Sorry, I love Darth Vader. He's the best. But anyway, I think the game borrows a little too heavily from some other titles like Tomb Raider and from Dark Souls, so it kind of loses a little bit of its own voice in that for its very first outing. And again, I'm a big Darksiders fan, so I understand the hypocrisy of me loving one thing that's kind of a combination of two other things, and this kind of not so much. But I kind of wish there was a little more emphasis on the story throughout the levels, as opposed to you just kind of fighting through the wildlife and getting to whatever destination you need to get to. I think they can do more. I really do believe so. And for that, all this considered, I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. Again, it's so good. It's Respawn Entertainment. They're one of the greatest devs in the business. And it's so fun to see a single-player Star Wars game come out without a bunch of microtransactions, a bunch of all this other DLC and stuff. It's just a really good, solid Star Wars game. I maybe should have cranked the difficulty down for myself, because it was a bit punishing at times, and I was like, but I still forced my way through it, and you can too, or you can turn it down. Play how you want to play. It doesn't matter to me. Anyway, thank you guys so much for stopping by today. I hope you enjoyed it. My name is Jimmy once again. I'm from Critical Reviews, and if you want to support the channel, consider going to our Patreon, go over to Spreadshirt, or just joining us over on Twitter. That'd be so much fun too. Just like tweet at me. Let me know if you actually watched the review, if you enjoyed it and whatnot, and what you thought of the game, because honestly, I want this to be a dialogue, so please comment or please tweet me and let me know, because I want to talk about this. Let's get into it. Thank you so much, and until next time, just remember to adapt and overcome.